and I will send the material to the dean, and through the dean you can get the materials after the class. Okay, so I will share my screen. This is how we class. I will share my screen, and then I will have a PowerPoint presentation, and then we will discuss and explain all the topics as we go along. And if at all you have any problem, or you have a problem understanding, or you have any questions, you please stop me right whenever you want, and then you ask me questions. Okay. So if at all you have any questions or queries in the middle, don't hesitate to stop me. All right. However, if like I said, since we have a lot of topics to cover, we will try to go as fast as possible. All right. So let me start by sharing my screen. Just a second. All right. I hope everyone can see the screen, right? And I hope I'm audible to every one of you. Like I said, we will, explain, and as we explain, if you have any questions or any clarifications you'd like to make, you please stop me and then raise a question right then. Right. Now we'll start with the introduction to counseling. First topic will be introducing counseling, Christian counseling, as well as pastoral counseling. Right? So shall we start by explaining what counseling means? Now, basically, counseling comes from the Latin word consilium, which means to counsel. Now, one Indian pastoral counselor, B.J. Prasantham, says that counseling is a relationship between the counselor and the counselee, characterized by trust and openness in a one-to-one or small relationship, whereby the counselee is helped to walk through his interpersonal problems and crises, and to find new options in life, and to discover God-given potentialities in life. Now here, B.J. Prasantham says that counseling is an attempt to help a counselee by the counselor, right? So that the counselee can work through his personal problems, interpersonal problems, and whatever crisis that counselee is facing, so that he or she will be able to find new options in life and discover God-given potentialities in life. So we will talk about client-centered therapy as well later on. So basically, Prasantham also, acknowledged that each and every person has God potentialities. Right? We all have our capabilities. So it is the job of the counselor through counseling to discover those God-given potentialities in life. Right? So that is one of the aims and objectives of counseling, according to Prasantham. Now, Wayne Oates defines counseling as a non-medical discipline, the aim of which are to facilitate and quicken personality growth and development, to help persons to modify life patterns with which they have become increasingly unhappy, and to provide comradeship and wisdom for persons facing the inevitable losses and disappointment in life. Now here, Wayne Oates also describe counseling as facilitating, as a process of facilitating personality growth, or quickening the personality growth and development of a person, especially those persons who are having problems with their life, who have who are becoming unhappy with their behavior, with their, the way they think, their thinking pattern and all. So to help them and also to provide a comradeship, right, and wisdom for those people having gone through this kind of crisis in their life. Now, Prasantham again also argues that counseling is the particular relationship between people that leads to healing and that leads to growth and change, right? To be autonomous and caring in living with oneself and others. So basically, these two definitions given by Prasantham and Oates suggest that counseling helps persons to grow and to develop, right, their personality. Now, it gives guidance and help people to change their behavior who are disturbed by crisis. So it helps them to change their behavioral patterns and also try to change their frame of reference. Now, frame of reference is a very important, term in counseling, which we will be, discussing in detail later on. So basically, it is how you view things, right? Our frame of reference would mean the client's way of looking at things, his or her perspective, right? So to change those perspectives and to change the behavioral patterns of the client is the aim of counseling. Now, according to Richard Vaughan, counseling is seen as a dialogue in which a counselor establishes helping relationship with person, help them better understand themselves and the situation in which they find themselves, and then help them to solve their problem or offer emotional support if the problem cannot be solved. Now here, Vaughan held that in addition to the assistance provided by counseling, in helping people to understand themselves and their situation, it also helps them to either solve their problem or provide emotional support when situation is irreparable. So basically, counseling, our typical understanding of counseling is usually advice giving. Our general understanding of many people, right? Our general understanding of counseling is about, advice giving by a counselor to the counselor. However, we will learn about this, that counseling is not only about giving advice. It is more about being emotionally present to your client. All right. It's not about listen. It's not only about advice giving, but also about listening to your client. So basically, you give emotional support to your client, even when the situation is irreparable, even when you cannot bring healing to their situation. All right. So that is what Richard Vaughan also talks about. Counseling is not only about giving advice, not only solving the problem for them, but also about being there, being present to your client, and giving them emotional support, even when things are irreparable. Right? Now, Paul E. Johnson says counseling is a responsive relationship arising from expressed needs to work through difficulties by means of emotional understanding and growing responsibilities. So, what we can gather from this is that, there's some general features that we need to understand. Right? Now, these general features of counseling is that counseling is first of all a process. Right? It's a process, and counseling is a relationship, a deep relationship between the client and the counselor. And counseling is a helping process. Right? It's a helping process. Counseling is a process of enabling healing, empowerment, and growth. And counseling deals with individuals as well as in groups as well. Now, counseling is to help people gain understanding in their inner conflicts and present problems. So through counseling, that means through counseling, you are going to help your client understand their inner conflicts. Whatever problems they have, you are going to help them understand that, right? And all the pressing problems. And also, counseling is to motivate people to utilize personal collective resources to the maximum. Now, personal collective resources would mean your ability, your God-given potentialities, right? Your capabilities that God gave you. Each of us have external resources as well as internal resources. Now, external resources would mean the kind of help that you can receive from your friends, from your families, or from some professionals, maybe doctors or psychiatrists or psychologists. And your inner resources would mean your ability to cope with, your inner strength, right? Those are resources. So each of us possess those resources. Now, through counseling, you are trying to help your client make use or employ those resources that they have, right? So through this counseling, you are going to empower your client to be able to use those resources that God has given to them. So basically, that is what counseling is all about. Now, counseling is to process focus towards change and transformation. That means basically means you are trying to change your client. You're trying to change the client's frame of reference. Basically, when people comes to you for help, they have a very narrow, frame of reference, very narrow, unlimited, perspective. And so, you as a counselor would try to help them broaden or widen their perspective, to change their way of thinking, and also to change their behavior, right? Those behavior which are unhealthy, those behavior which are irrational, you are going to change them to a rational one and a healthy one. So change and transformation is a very important element or element of a counseling process. Now, counseling is to help people experience a new direction in life. And counseling is a program of emotional re-education. Now, coming to pastoral counseling. Pastoral counseling. Now, having described some of the meaning of counseling in general, we will further concentrate on the meaning of pastoral counseling. Now, pastoral counseling is a specific subtype under the umbrella of a larger pastoral care ministry. So basically, pastoral counseling is one of the means through which you give pastoral care to your people. Right. So it is under the wider pastoral care ministry. It is performed by ministers, ordained personals, and in some cases, authorized non-ordained personals. Now, since pastoral counseling is a type of care performed by ordained ministers and clergy, it is often considered as one of the functions in a person's ministry rather than a profession in itself. Even though there's a secular usage of the term pastoral, we will only consider the religious connotation. So pastoral, the word pastoral has a secular meaning also. Like for instance, we used to use the term pastoral color, right? So even though there is a secular use of the term pastoral, for this time we only consider the religious connotation. All right. Now, Seward Hildner, one of the pioneer pastoral counselor, argues that pastoral counseling is, I quote, the attempt by a pastor to help people help themselves through the process of gaining understanding of their inner conflicts. It is a relationship between one who seeks and one who gives help. It is basically an emotional re-education. So Seward Hiltner contends that pastoral counseling not only help people to help themselves with their immediate problems, but also prepares them to deal with other pressing problems. So basically, this is how we should understand counseling: helping people to help themselves. So basically, what this definition of pastoral counseling given by Seward Hiltner is that the basic idea is that you are not going to decide for your client. You are not going to directly, do things for your client. All right. Now, many people, many of your clients, when they come to you for help, will want you to help them, right? Do things for them. Sometimes decide for them. However, as a counselor, you should avoid, as far as possible, you should avoid making decision for your client. You should not do things for them, right? Do things for them in the sense that you should not be the one who is going to take the action. You are just a facilitator, right? You are just an agent which empowers the client so that they will be empowered to take action. And so that is why, as a counselor, you should try to avoid, as far as possible, not to decide for your client. You should not take the decision for them, for your client. But then you should help your client so that they will be able to decide for themselves. Right? So basically, you are not doing things for them. You are just a facilitator, a catapult. Right? Sometimes, see, counselors are used. Midwife is used as an example to describe the whole of the counselor. Now, we all know what midwife does, right? Especially midwives are very important, especially in rural areas where there is no hospitals or doctors or medical workers. Midwives are the ones who help mothers, pregnant mothers, bear a child. However, they are not the ones who are having the child. They are there to help the mother bear a child, right? So also, a counselor is not the one who is going to do everything for the client. He or she is just a facilitator, just a helper. And that is why Seward Hiltner says that counseling aims at helping people help themselves. All right, I hope this is clear. Now, we cannot deal in too much detail about all the things because we have a lot of things to cover. Anyway, moving on, William E. Hume says that pastoral counseling, either in one-to-one or in groups, is a ministry to persons, couples, and families to assist them in working through pressing troubles in their relationship to themselves, to others, and to God. So it is basically about relationship, mending or reconciling relationship to, whether it is with themselves or with others or with God. So Hume, suggests or talks about counseling as a one-on-one counseling process or a group, which is a ministry of which help or assist the person who work through their relationship with themselves, with others, and right? John Patton believes that pastoral counseling is a type of pastoral care which is performed by one who has been educated theologically for ordained ministry and who has the identity and accountability of a clergy person, and it may include support, guidance, and a variety of other means through which care may be expressed. That means you show your concern, right? through different means. You show your concern, you show your care to your client through different means. So he claims pastoral counseling as a function performed by theologically trained, right, ordained ministers to offer care to people who seek help. Now, Howard J. Kleinbell also claims that pastoral counseling is the utilization of a variety of healing methods or therapeutic methods to help people handle their problems and crises more growthfully and thus experience healing of their brokenness. So Kleinbell, looked at things in a very positive way. So he is claiming that a crisis presents a growth opportunity. Right? So problems in our lives, crisis in our lives presents a growing opportunity. And so that is why he says that it is a utilization of variety of healing methods, right? Therapeutic methods to help people handle their problems and crises more growthfully and thus experience healing of their brokenness. Now, pastoral counseling, therefore, can be defined as a counseling done by the pastors as opposed to any other professional counseling where pastoral counselors seek to integrate their counseling practice with the theology and spirituality of their faith community. Pastoral counseling often integrates psychological and theological theories along with the ministerial functions in an effort to address psycho-spiritual issues. And then coming to Christian counseling. Now, Association of Christian Counselors defines Christian counseling as activities that seek to help people towards constructive change and growth in any or every aspect of their lives through a caring relationship and within agreed relational boundaries, carried out by a counselor who has a Christian worldview, values, and assumption. So Christian counseling basically is done by people who has who's a counselor who has a Christian worldview, values, and assumption. Right? Counselors use different methodologies or models for the counseling depending on their training and what they find to be effective. Basically, they can use any kind of methods or therapies that they are familiar with. They expertise. However, they also have different ways of viewing the world. Christian counselors are those who have a Christian worldview. Right? They may employ many other therapies. However, they are guided by the Christian worldview. That is very important when discussing about Christian, counseling. However, they do not make any assumption or have any requirements about your beliefs and values, and they will not press their faith onto anyone. All right? They will not press their faith onto you. That means to the client. Now, Roger Gaberford defines Christian counseling as counseling is the most truly Christian when the counselor has a deep faith, counsels with excellence, holds a Christian worldview, is guided by Christian values in choosing the means, goals, and motivations of counseling, actively seek the presence and work of God, and actively utilizes spiritual intervention and resources within ethical guidelines. So basically, Christian counseling is a counseling where you employ the different methods of therapies or therapeutic, methods available to you. However, when giving counseling, you are guided by the Christian values and beliefs in your faith. Right? Now, moving on to the second topic, understanding the goals of counseling, directive and non-directive methods of counseling. So basically, when we talk about counseling, it is basically divided into two main types of counseling. So these are called directive and non-directive methods of counseling. So let us discuss what directive counseling is first. Now, directive counseling is an approach to counseling and psychotherapy, in which the therapeutic process is directed along the lines considered relevant by the counselor or the therapist. Okay, let me try to. I will give you this this presentation. So let me try to briefly differentiate between the directive and undirective. Okay. Now, in directive, I will not follow my presentation. I will just give you a brief idea, so that it would be short. So directive counseling is basically the kind of counseling where the counselor basically gives advice to the client. It's also called directive therapy. So basically here in this kind of counseling, the therapist or the counselor takes on the active role, the directive role. So he will instruct or he will guide the client. And so basically the client is playing a very passive role, whereas the client, the therapist or the counselor is playing the active and directive. So the counselor attempts to give his or her opinions of what the solution could be, and advises the counselee to follow certain directions. Right? However, in this approach, there is a tendency to coerce, impose ideas by the counselor. Right? So, since he is taking the active part, the counselor is taking the active part, there's a chance, or there's a chance that the counselor will dictate everything. Right? And that is why what many people, people who are in favor of client-centered, counseling oppose. Right? So they say that each of us have worth, each of us have capabilities, potentialities, and so client should be trusted. Right? They are to be regarded as as a human being who could employ or who could use the God-given potentialities. However, in the directive counseling, counselors do not, care too much about that. So, counselor is the one who is taking charge of everything. So, this approach can be considered advice-giving relationship where the help has to accept the direction of the counselor and follow it. Right. Now, in this approach, there is also a tendency to consider the help as a sick or a weak person, incapable of deciding for himself. Now, in non-directive counseling is opposite to the directive counseling, where the therapist or the counselor establish an encouraging atmosphere, right, and clarifies the client's idea rather than directing the counseling process. So it was also called Rogers. It was Carl Rogers who introduced the term non-directive in the 1940s to distinguish his approach to therapy from the existing forms of therapy at that time. Now, in a non-directive counseling, the counselor does not consider himself or herself as the only source of wisdom in arriving, a solution of the problem. So there is a high regard of the potentiality of the helpee or the client, who is also a human with God-given potentiality. So, an atmosphere of acceptance, respect, and understanding of the help by the helper prevails in a non-directive counseling relationship. So basically, it is both the party, both the client and the counselor plays active role in this kind of counseling. It is not only the counselor who dictates, who is the powerful one, right? But this kind of counseling gives respect to the client, even though they are having many problems, even though they are finding themselves, unable to, make decisions for themselves sometimes. But it is the counselor who is helping the client, to decide for themselves. So basically, what it is like what we have discussed earlier. As a counselor, you are not deciding for themselves, but you are helping your client decide, right? So you empower your client to decide. So in this kind of non-directive counseling, both the parties play an active role, right? The therapist is walking alongside the client. Sometimes, sometimes a few paces behind, and maybe sometimes a few paces ahead. Sometimes stopping to discuss where to go next, but always going where the client goes. The therapist never chooses the direction. In a therapeutic relationship where the client or the counselee feel valued or listened to and understood, they have the opportunity to turn things over in their mind, to reflect on their problems and seek new solution. Now, it might take some time, but the ownership of the process is theirs. So basically, that means you are not choosing for themselves. You're choosing for your client. The client is the one who chooses the direction or the path which he or she will take. All right. So that is the difference between directive and non-directive counseling. Right? Any questions? I hope it's clear. Basically, the difference between non-directive and directive counseling is that in a directive counseling, you are directed. The client is being directed by the counselor. Whereas in directive counseling, both the parties enjoy the same authority, right? Same authority in the sense they both play the same active part, and then both of them are responsible for the decisions and also for the things they do, the direction or the path they choose to take. Right? Now, any questions so far? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to the third one: biblical foundation of health, healing, and wholeness. Now, healing. First of all, let us look what healing is. Now, if we are to adopt the biblical view of a person as a whole being, then our understanding of healing should also include the whole person. So in this sense, healing is the process of being restored to bodily wholeness, emotional well-being, mental functioning, and spiritual aliveness. So healing means becoming whole again. And in the words of Stuart Hildner, it is a re-becoming. It is a re-becoming. Now, in short, we may say that the concept of healing signifies the bringing of wholeness and soundness to any or every aspect of human life. So basically, that means healing covers every area and every aspect of our life. It does not only deals with bodily healing. It does not only deals with psychological healing, emotional healing. Right? It does not only deals with a spiritual healing, but it includes all of this. It includes any or every aspect of human life, bringing wholeness and bringing soundness, aliveness to everything, every aspect of our human life. Now, healing, the Old Testament view of healing is directly related to restoration of the broad state of well-being and peaceful relationship with God, self, fellow beings, and environment. The Old Testament presents a holistic worldview without the division of soul and spirit and body. Sickness of the body indicates sickness of the soul, and that the world or sometimes the individual was under the judgment of God. Now, sickness was not something that happened outside of other experiences of life. Rather, sickness of any kind that existed in God's creation revealed the fallenness of the created order. The Old Testament used the word rapa in a variety of settings to emphasize that the entire sin problem of humanity could find remedy in God and God alone. Right? In God and God alone. Now, a key theme in the Old Testament is that we often see this phrase, I, the Lord, am your healer, right? Which is found in Exodus chapter 15, verse 26. Now, OT introduces God to us as a creator, as well as redeemer, and as the Lord who heals. Now, in the Old Testament, the Lord God, which is Yahweh, alone was the source of all healing. In every aspect of his life, man or human being is dependent on the Lord God alone. The privilege of physical healing is governed by the will and sovereignty of God. The Lord God heals whomever he wills, whomever he wants. It is his sovereign choice. Man or human beings has no basis for demanding that God intervene and heal him of his or her illness. The healing work of God can result in physical and material well-being, and also in the forthcoming deliverances. At the same time, he is seen as one who brings pestilence, the plague followed close behind. Now, the theme of God restoring the faithful following either human disobedience or divine chastening is linked with healing. At times, healing is associated with forgiveness, with deliverance from sometimes imminent destruction, and with renewal of wounded human spirit. Therefore, it is clear that the OT views health as blessing from God and illness as a divine punishment. So, health is viewed as a blessing from God, and healing is provided by God alone. And wholeness means experiencing aliveness, experiencing soundness, experiencing wholeness in every aspect of one's life. So God also heals through the use of elements that God has created and skills and talents that he has given to human beings. Okay. So basically, what the biblical understanding of healing, health, and wholeness is that health is viewed as a blessing from God and illness as a divine punishment. And healing is given by God alone. And that God is the one who has sovereign authority, sovereign power to bring healing to his people, and he is the one who can provide the kind of healing that includes a holistic healing, right? So when we talk about healing, it not only talk about physical healing, physiological healing. It not only talk about the mental or emotional healing, but includes both the body, mind, and the spirits. All is the holistic view of healing. Now, let us look at the healing ministry of Jesus Christ. Now, in the gospel, we see that healing is an integral part of Jesus' mission to a needy world. He was concerned with healing the physical, the moral, and mental diseases of a person. For Jesus, the whole person is important, and therefore his approach again is holistic. Jesus' approach is very holistic. The gospel demonstrates that Jesus healed out of love and concern. If you look at Matthew 14:14, right? Jesus healed out of love and concern. Now, the New Testament regards healing as an indication of the presence of the kingdom of God, right? In which restoration of bodily wholeness, emotional well-being, and mental functioning take place in the context of spiritual advance. Now, Herding has argued that Jesus' healing were not only effective sign of the kingdom, but public effective sign that demand a verdict from all who witness it. Now, Jesus often healed merely by pronouncement. Right? But the gospel writers also mentioned his laying on of hands or touching the sick in the context of his healing. But this was a boundary crossing gesture of compassion, which reflects the extension of God's own hand, which acted in creation and deliverance in the OT. And so it signifies the power of God at work in and through Jesus. It signifies the power of God at work in and through Jesus. Now, Jesus' act of healing, for instance, touching the leper, is both a demonstration of a higher and a new law of love, and of the fact that good news of the kingdom is proclaimed not only in words but in action, right? And it's also able to break through the barriers, right? Barriers of anxiety, barriers of fear, and barriers of scrupulosity. Now, at times, the healing activity of Jesus is to be followed by the observance of ritual cleansing. Right? For example, we see that in Mark chapter 1, verse 40 to 45, Luke chapter 5, verse 12 to 16. And more frequently, however, his healing work is seen as a violation of the Sabbath, prohibition against work, as in his healing the man with the withered hand, or the cure of a woman with the spirit of infirmity, and of the man with the dropsy. Now, Jesus is depicted as giving priority to the restoration of human health over, the observance of Sabbath. So basically, that means Jesus gives more importance to healing than the observation of some, laws, religious laws, or some traditional laws, some traditions. So he is more concerned about giving healing. He is more concerned about the plight of the poor, the plight of the destitute, the plight of those people who need his help. Right? So he gives more importance to those things. Now, again, the source of Jesus' power is Jesus' power to heal is God, as is made explicit in Luke chapter 5, verse 17. Now, in the controversy about the source of Jesus' power to perform exorcism, he asserts that it is by the Spirit or by the finger of God that he expels demons, which is found in Matthew chapter 12 and also Luke chapter 11. Just as Israel had been delivered from slavery in Egypt by God's finger. Now, in response to the questions from John the Baptist as who Jesus is, he depicts his role as enabling the blind to see, right? The lame to walk, lepers to be cleansed, the deaf to hear, and the dead to be raised. Now, all this description of the healing of humanity derived from one word, from the words of the prophet Isaiah, who announced what God will do in behalf of his faithful people in preparation for the new age. The claim that Jesus is indeed God's agent to accomplish this divine purpose by God's power is directly announced in Luke's account of the sermon of Jesus at Nazareth, where having referred to this healing and activity promised by God, he adds, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." So basically, Jesus is indeed God's agent to accomplish this divine purpose by God's power is directly announced in Luke's account of the Sermon of Nazareth, Jesus of Nazareth. So basically, God incarnate Jesus cares for the plight of those people, and he also gives importance to the restoration or performing a holistic healing, giving a holistic healing rather than giving importance to religious laws or traditional laws. So he showed his preference to the experience of healing that is directly, given through him by God. Now, the third one is healing through counseling as redemptive experience. The true hope and healing are found through the redemptive work of Jesus. A Christian counseling, just like the concept of healing found in the scripture, embraces the awareness that healing is understood as a process of being restored, right, to bodily wholeness, also emotional well-being, and mental functioning, and spiritual aliveness. Right? And this privilege of rejuvenation, of healing, is granted by the Lord who heals. Now, according to Good News of John, the purpose of Jesus' coming is for us to have life, right? A life in all its fullness. John 10:10, right? Now, the actualization of this life in all its fullness is the redemptive experience by people to whom healing and wholeness has been granted. Now, and since it is God who can bestow this redemptive experience and in turn healing and wholeness, Christian counseling integrates prayer, scripture, and other Christian components into the therapeutic process. Therefore, the therapy employed is based on components, is based on biblical truths, and priority is given to the faith as an important part of the healing process. Now, this redemptive experience encourages personal growth in all areas of life, whether it's spiritual, whether it is mental, physical, and relational. Now, this redemptive experience is achieved or encountered when God comforts us as we grieve over our wounds, losses, and sinful reactions to our pain. And also God feels and this redemptive experience is achieved when God feels our deficiencies, both in our relationship with Him and with His people. And also when God empowers us to forgive as we cancel the debts owed to us. And also this redemptive experience is achieved when God transforms our mind and our character as we learn what it is to love, and we love in relationship, family, and community. And also when God gives new meaning to our pain by redeeming it for good as we love boldly. And also when God restores the dignity of His image in us. Okay? Now, moving on to the next chapter, introducing as selected models of counseling. First of all, we'll talk about psychoanalysis by Sigmund Freud. Psychoanalysis is a therapy or a psychotherapy introduced by Sigmund Freud. Now, since we have a very limited time, I will not talk about the life and the work of Sigmund Freud. All right, I will leave that to you for to read by yourself. Right? Now, some of the concepts of and principles of psychoanalysis. Now, Sigmund Freud's fundamental assumption about our mental life was that it is divided into three parts: our mental life is divided into three parts: the conscious, the pre-conscious, and the unconscious. Now, the conscious, first of all, refers to those ideas and those sensations of which we are aware. Basically, it operates on the surface of personality, right? And it plays a relatively small role in personality development functioning. Now, let me try to explain this by giving an example. Now, the conscious are those things which you have in mind right now. Right? Those ideas and those sensations of which we are aware. Now, for instance, if I ask you, what is your name? Right? Now, you will be ready with your answer. You don't have to think at all, right? You know your name very clearly, and so you don't need any effort, right? You don't need to give any effort to remember your name. So that means you are answering me, or you are giving your response from the conscious level, right? So what you are aware refers to those ideas and those sensations of which we are aware. So it operates on the surface of personality. And on the surface, if you look at the internet, you will see many diagrams, many figures. Usually, an iceberg is used to demonstrate the concept of this personality given by Freud. Now, if you consider an iceberg, a big iceberg. Now, iceberg, what we have seen is only a small portion. Right? Beneath the water surface, there's a more bigger, iceberg. Now, that is used to, define, or that is used to project the conscious, the pre-conscious, and the conscious. Now, the conscious is the one that can be seen, right? That is above the sea level. What is being exposed at the surface? So that is the conscious. Now, the pre-conscious is those that contains those experiences that are unconscious, but that could become conscious with a little effort. It is what we might call today available memory. Anything that can easily be made conscious. The memories you are not at the moment thinking about, but can readily bring to mind. Right? If I ask you, or you may have forgotten the food that you had for a supper or for dinner yesterday, right? But you could probably recall them readily if you were asked to list them for a dietitian who is trying to help you lose some weight. Right? Now, for instance, if I ask you, what do you have for your dinner yesterday? Now, sometimes it may be you may be very clear, but sometimes you might need a little effort, right, to think about what you are having as a dinner. You might say a roti, right? You might say a dal, sambar, or whatever it is, right? But those things which is not on your mind at the moment, but with a little effort, you are able to recall. Right? Now, for instance, if I ask you, how old is your father, let's say. Okay. Suppose you know your father's age. There are people who do not know their father's age, but there are people who knows. But sometimes we do not think about our father's age all the time, right? So it might not be there in our consciousness. But if we give a little effort, we will be able to recall, or we will be able to give the right answer. So pre-conscious are those experiences or those memories with a little effort that could become conscious, right? With a little effort. So available memory, anything that can easily be made conscious. Memories you are not at the moment not thinking about, but can really bring to mind. Those are preconscious. And this preconscious exists just beneath the surface of awareness. So coming back to the iceberg example. Now we say that those icebergs that we see at the surface, above the sea level, that is the conscious. Now the preconscious would be just beneath the water surface. Some portion, up to some portion, will be the preconscious, and the unconscious would be the bottom part, right? The larger part, which is well hidden from the surface, which is not visible from the which is not easily visible from the surface, right? Those are unconscious, right? So the unconscious operates on the deepest level of personality. Now, it consists of those experiences and memories of which we are not aware. Right? Such mental states remain out of our awareness because making them conscious, bringing them to consciousness, would create tremendous pain and anxiety for us. Right? Now, the conscious could include many bad experiences that you had, maybe in your childhood or in your earlier part of life. So there are experiences, very bad experiences, which you want to erase from your mind. There are some memories which you do not want to think about it anymore, which you just want to, shove it away, right? Erase it out of your mind. Right? Now, Sigmund Freud says that even those bad experiences which we do not want to remember, would like to, erase it completely out of your mind. They are not gone, right? That's what he said. It is not gone, but it operates somewhere beneath, right? It operates somewhere beneath, and these experiences, could be sexual abuse that we experienced during early childhood at the hands of a parent, or a relative, or a family friend. Or it could consist of incestuous feelings, right? Or a strong emotional reactions of anger or rage, toward certain authority figures. Or it could be some painful feelings of shame and humiliations growing out of competitive experiences. Okay? Now, a key point is that such repressed memories, those bad experiences which you have repressed or suppressed, do not simply disappear once they have been thrust from awareness. So because basically it means those bad experiences which you would like to forget, right? You would like to erase from your mind. Those did not just go away. Those did not just simply disappear. Right? They continue to operate outside of our awareness, and they seek expression in various defensive, disguised, and distorted ways. So those things would try to influence you. Okay. So basically, those bad experiences don't just go away. Even though you want to forget them, even though you don't want to think about them anymore, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't disappear. In fact, it keeps on operating out of awareness, and it keeps on influencing your life. So that is what the unconscious is, right? They continue to operate outside awareness and seek expression in various defensive or disguised or very distorted ways. Now, unconscious ideas, memories, and experiences may continually interfere with conscious and rational behavior. So, the unconscious contains thoughts and memories and desires that are buried deep in ourselves, well below our conscious awareness. Even though we are not aware of their existence, they exert great influence on our behavior. Now, while it is impossible to make this unconscious experience fully conscious, their existence can be clarified or illuminated through the use of psychoanalytic therapeutic procedures. Right? In a sense, if the therapy works, the person becomes more conscious or aware of the nature of these forces than he or she was at the beginning of the therapy. So basically, through this analytic theory therapy, you are trying to, or the therapist is trying to dig out or unearth those that are contained in the unconscious, those problems that keeps on influencing your life. Basically, those repressed memories usually influences in a very negative way, right? Your life, your behavior, the way it influences you. So it does not just go away, right? It influences, right? So that is what the conscious, the preconscious, and the conscious, unconscious is. Now, it also talks about id, ego, and superego. Right? According to Sigmund Freud, human personality is a complex and has more than a single component, right? Now, in his famous psychoanalytic theory of personality, personality is composed of 3 elements. These 3 elements of personality, known as the id, the ego, and the superego, work together to create a complex human behaviors. Now, you might have heard about the id, ego, and superego. All right. Now, this plays a very, very important part in our building our personality. Right? How we act out, how we, project ourselves, how we do things. These 3 components of human behavior, 3 elements of personality, influences how we, act out. Now, let's try to explain them one by one. Right? Now, each component adds its own unique contribution to our personality. Okay, and all 3 elements work together to form a, as I've said, complex human behavior. Now, according to Freud's theory, certain aspects of our personality are more primal, are more original, right? And might pressure you to act upon your most basic urges. Other parts of your personality work to counteract these urges and strive to make you conform to the demands of reality. So basically, your personality is sometimes influenced by a very basic instinct, right? Your basic instinct. However, some are, are influenced by those things that you have learned as you move through your life, as you grow up, as you experience many, many new things, right? So we will take a closer look at each of these key parts of personality, right? How they work individually and how they interact. So firstly, the id. Now, the id is the only component of personality that is present from birth, right? That is very original, right? That is present from birth. It is the only component of our personality that is present from our birth. That is our original self, right? Now, this aspect of personality is entirely unconscious and includes the instinctive and primitive behaviors. Now, the id, according to Freud, the id is the source of all psychic energy, making it the primary component of personality. And the id is driven by pleasure principle, which strive for immediate gratification of all desires, of wants or needs. Now, if these needs are not satisfied immediately, the result is a state of anxiety or tension. Now, let me try to explain this by giving example. All right. Now, it's already 7:12. Now, for some, you might be very hungry now, right? You will be very hungry now. Let's presume that you are hungry. You might not be hungry anyway. Let's presume that one of you are very hungry. So, the id, your personality, right? The component, the id says that if you are hungry, then satisfy your hunger by eating food or whatever eatables you have ready. Now, the id does not care whether it is an appropriate time to eat or not. We are in the middle of a class, and Many people will find it inappropriate to eat in the middle of the class, right? To eat in the middle of class. However, the eat does not concern about that thing. It is, like I said, it is the only component of personality that is present from birth. It is the basic instinct. So the basic instinct says, if you want anything, if you desire anything, if you need anything, then satisfy those needs, satisfy those wants, satisfy those desires. So in this case, satisfy your hunger if you are hungry. So the eat says that the eat will pressurize you, will influence you to try to satisfy your needs immediately as soon as possible. Right. Now, if these needs are not met, if these needs are not satisfied, if the desires or the wants are not satisfied immediately, the result is a state of anxiety or tension. You have some anxiety. You will not feel. You feel uneasy. Right? So the eat says, if you are hungry, you eat. Satisfy your hunger. So the eat, as I've mentioned, is driven by pleasure principle. Right? Pleasure is what is driven your personality. So basically, in all areas of life, in all aspects of life, whatever you need, whatever you want, whatever you desire, whatever is going to bring pleasure to your life, do it, take it, eat it, right? Satisfy those wants and those needs. So eat is that part of the personality that wants to satisfy whatever you want, whatever you desire. I hope it's clear. That part of your personality that pushes you to satisfy whatever you want, desires, or needs is the ego. Right? Now, there's the ego. The ego is the component of personality that is responsible
క్లాస్ నడుస్తుందా ఆన్ చేసి ఉంచండి.
Our sense of right and wrong. The superego provides guidelines for making judgments. Right? According to Freud, the superego begins to emerge around 5 years. Right? Then there are two parts of superego: the ego ideal, which includes all the rules, the standards of good behavior. Right? These behaviors include those which are approved of by parental and other authority figures. Obeying these rules leads to feelings of pride, value, and accomplishment. And the conscience includes information about things that are viewed as bad by parents and society. Now, these behaviors are often forbidden and lead to bad consequences, punishments, or feelings of guilt and remorse. So the superego acts to perfect and civilize our behavior. It works to suppress all unacceptable urges of the id and struggles to make the ego act upon, idealistic standards rather than upon realistic principle. Superego is present in the conscious, preconscious, and the unconscious. So the superego serves as a censor, a controller on the ego, and function and compromises the individual's ideas derived from the values of his family and society, right? Being the source of guilty feelings and fear of punishment. So basically, how the superego operates is that now you are taught many good things, right from your childhood by your parents. And also, each of our society has norms. Our understanding of what is right and wrong, right? So we learn those values, those moral standards as we grow up. So we use those values and standards, moral standards, all these things to, analyze whether an action is right or wrong. I hope I'm clear here. That means your superego holds all the internalized moral standards. Internalized moral standards would mean all the things that you've learned that is morally, that is socially acceptable, that is socially in line with the social norms, the societal norms, or that is in line with your parental advice and instructions. So your ability to make decision will be guided by those standards. It will be guided by those standards. Now, ego, the previous one, ego operates on the reality principle. That means in reality, it looks only at the reality. However, the superego looks at whether the action is right or wrong. The action is socially acceptable or not. So this superego tries to influence the ego to influence the id, right? To operate in a more acceptable ways. So basically, the superego is what you have learned, many good things that you have learned from your parents, from your families, from your society, right? And so these things that you've learned from, all the good things you've learned from them, will be used as a tool through which you analyze whether your actions or your behavior is right or wrong. So in the examples that we have given, you being are very hungry. Now, it says that if you are hungry, then satisfy your wants, then satisfy your hunger, right? It doesn't care about how people would think. It doesn't care about whether it's acceptable or not. It is just concerned with satisfying one's hunger, the id. Right? is concerned with only satisfying one's desire, one's hunger. However, the ego says that no, you cannot just satisfy your hunger at the moment. You should look at the reality, right? You should not just think about yourself. You should look at the reality, whether in the real world these things are appropriate or not, right? And then the superego will says that yes, your action should reflect whether should be influenced by whether the action that you are doing is socially appropriate or not. Is it good or not? Is it good or is it bad? I hope you understand. So these are the three elements of personality, and the component of personality that is developed in people's life. Right? So this is a very, very important personality that affects how you behave, whether in public or with other people. Now, psychoanalysis as a therapy is based on the concept that individuals are unaware of the many factors that cause their behavior and emotions. And these unconscious factors have the potential to produce unhappiness, which in turn is expressed through a score of undistinguishable symptoms, including disturbing personality traits, difficulty in relating to others, or disturbances in self-esteem or general disposition. Now, psychoanalytic treatment is highly individualized and seeks to show how the conscious factors affect behavioral patterns, relationship, and overall mental health. Now, treatment traces the unconscious factors to their origins, show how they have evolved and developed over the course of many years, and subsequently helps individuals to overcome the challenges they face in life. So basically, this psychoanalysis as a therapy tries to see, like I have mentioned, all your experiences, especially those bad experiences in your life, affected the way your personality right now. It affected your life in the present. So all those experiences of yours, especially those bad memories, which you thought you have deleted, or which you have thought you have, wiped away from your memories, they don't just go away. They, unconsciously operates deep within, right? Deep within your personality, and it influences you. It influences your behavior. And so psychoanalysis as a therapy would try to dig out those repressed memories, those experiences, those things that influences you to have to behave in a very bad manner, or those experiences that influences you to experience mental disturbances. So it tries to unearth, it tries to dig out, it tries to know what is the basic cause of all these things. Now, and once these things are dig out, or once these things are trace, then the client, the counselor will help the client to overcome all the challenges that they face in life. Right? So basically, that is what psychoanalysis is all about. It is a treatment. A treatment traces the unconscious factors to their origin, to their basic origin, and show how they have evolved and developed over the course of many years. And then, after identifying the problems, it subsequently helps the individuals to overcome the challenges they face in life. Right? So basically, that is how psychoanalysis works. Okay, let's move on. We are spending too much time on one thing. We only have around half an hour. We still have many things to cover. Now, another one is, I will give you this and you will continue to read for yourself. Okay. Now, this next one is client-centered therapy by Carl Rogers. Now, client-centered therapy is a non-directive form of counseling, the ones that we have explained a little bit earlier. So I will just try to explain it in a very brief way. Okay. Now, I'm not going to talk about Carl Rogers, his life, his work, or his biography and all these things. I leave it to you for you to read. Right? Client-centered therapy, also known as a person-centered therapy. Right? That means they put the person in the center, the client in the center. They recognize the worth of the client, right? So it's a client-centered therapy. It's a client. It's a therapy where you give importance to your client, physically, right? So client-centered therapy, also known as person-centered therapy, is a non-directive form of talk therapy that was developed by humanist psychologist Carl Rogers during the 1940s and the 50s. Now, how does client-centered therapy work? Now, these mental health professionals who utilize this approach strive to create a therapeutic environment that is conformable, right? Non-judgmental and empathetic. Now, two of the key elements of client-centered therapy are that it is non-directive. It is non-directive. Therapists allow clients to lead the discussion and do not try to steer the client or the counselee in a particular direction. And also, it emphasizes unconditional positive regard. Unconditional positive regard means you respect the client. Whoever your client is, you respect him. Therapy shows complete acceptance and support for the clients without casting judgment. Your client could be anyone. He could be a murderer, right? He could be a very, he could be a thief or a very bad person. But inside a client, inside a counseling session, if he is your client, you are going to emphasize unconditional positive regard. You are not going to judge him from what he do. You are going to consider him as a human being, right? A human being, and respect him as a human being. Now, according to Carl Rogers, client-centered therapies need three key qualities. One is genuineness. The therapist needs to share his or her feelings honestly, right? By modeling this behavior, the therapist can help teach the client to also develop this important skill. You are genuine in everything you do. You are genuine in trying to help your client. Right? You are not just trying to help just because it's your job. No, that's not the way you should do it. You should try to genuinely help your client. Right? And secondly is unconditional positive regard. Like I have said, whoever it is, no matter what crime or what experiences or what your client has gone through, you are going to accept him. You are going to respect him as a human being. Right? Therapists must accept the client for who they are and display support and care, no matter what the client is facing or experiencing. And thirdly is empathetic understanding. Now, the therapist needs to be reflective, acting as a mirror of the client's feelings and thoughts. The goal of this is to allow the client gain a clearer understanding of their own inner thoughts, perception, and emotions. Now, by exhibiting these three characteristics, that is genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and empathetic understanding, therapists can help clients grow psychologically, right? Become more self-aware and change their behavior through self-direction. Now, in this type of environment, a client feels safe and says he or she feels free from judgment. Now, Carl Rogers believed that this type of atmosphere allows client to develop a healthier view of the world and a less distorted view of themselves. So basically, in this kind of therapy, client-centered therapy, you put your client in very important, and you do not direct the way. You respect them as they are. You are going to help them. Your effort should be genuine. Your effort should be genuine. You are not doing it just because it is your job as a counselor. No, you must be genuinely committed to help that person, any person, to overcome his or her problems. So you value them as a human being. So basically, that is what client-centered therapy is. Now you can read the others. Next is transactional analysis. Transactional analysis by Eric Berne. Now I leave all his biography, his works, his life for you to read. Now, transactional analysis embraces a positive view of human nature, just like the previous one. They considered human beings. This humanistic view, humanistic psychologists like Carl Rogers and Eric Berne view people basically good. They have worth, they have potential, they have capabilities. That is how they view human beings. Even though they may be and they may experience a very, very problematic situation. They are undergoing, crisis situation. They have a mental problem, or their lives are filled with, many bad things. Still, as a human being, they have their worth, they have their capabilities, they have their potentialities. Right? So that is how they view human nature. So also transaction analysis embraces a positive view of human nature. Some basic assumptions are all people are important and their concerns are valid. All people should be treated as equals and with respect. With a few exceptions, all people have the ability to think as adults. All people decide their own destiny and can make changes to it. Now, our general understanding, our basic understanding of some people who have problem is that they cannot decide on their own. Now, this is particularly true for those people who are facing problems themselves, who are, approaching a counselor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They feel that they are helpless. Many feel that they feel helpless. Many feel that they are helpless. Many feel that it is hopeless. They are in a hopeless situation. They are in distress. They cannot do anything to improve their situation. Right? That is their basic understanding. But transactional analysis or humanistic psychology view human being as having potential to, improve their situation. Right? They have the power, or they have the strength to decide their own destiny, and they have the power and the strength to make changes in their life. They have the power to change the way they believe, the way they think, the way they behave. Okay, so this is very important. Now, from these assumptions, transactional analysis, TA, creates a form of therapy that is not only problem-oriented but also goal-oriented. So basically, it aims to free the client from maladaptive patterns of behavior, unhealthy behavior based on the past thinking. Now, in doing so, they will be able to choose a new direction in life. And in fact, the basic goal of transactional analysis is to help clients make new decisions about their current behavior and also change the direction their lives are taking. In other words, a person will learn to write his or her own life story instead of allowing it to be written for him or her. It aims to free the client from maladaptive patterns of behavior based on past thinking, so that they will develop new direction in life. And also, person will learn to write his own her life story. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
చెప్పాను.
Okay. So basically, it means a person decide for himself which path he would take, and also change whatever is unhealthy behavior or his way of thinking.
ఆమె కన్ఫ్యూజన్ భయంతో ఉంది ఆవిడ.
Now, it aims to free the client from adaptive patterns of behavior. Let us look at the roles of the counselor. Now, in transactional analysis, the counselor and the client work together. Right? Work together. Establish the specific goals of therapy. Again, I, a counselor who decides for the client. All of them are working together to establish the specific goals of therapy. Specific goals of therapy. In other words, the counselor will use his knowledge to address concern by the client rather than telling the client what issues needs to focus on. Now, the process of treatment in transactional centers on this collaboration between the client and the counselor. Now, in fact, and sometimes an actual written contract is often used. Now, this TA contract is an express agreement between the client and the counselor about the desired goal and what the treatment process will consist of. Right? Now, there are 4 life positions which impacted one's thought process and emotional and relational experiences. So, life positions, which basically this is how you look at life, okay? How you look at yourself, how you look at other people around, and how you look at the world. First life position is I am okay, you are okay. That means I am fine, you are also fine, right? This means you have a positive, positive regard for yourself, positive regard for others and the world, right? So I am okay, you are okay. Second life position is I'm okay, you're not okay. I'm okay, you're not okay. Now, this is a position of people who project their problems onto others and blame them, put them down, criticize them. I'm okay, you're the one who's not okay. Right? This position is that of a person who needs an underdog or someone to maintain his or her sense of okayness. He will always look for the problems that others have. Right? Will not accept them. So I am okay, but you're the one who's not okay. Right? And then the third life position is I am not okay, you're okay. That is the opposite of the second one. I am not okay. Right? This is the kind of person who are depressive, very depressive. So is known as depressive or a one down position, and is characterized by feeling powerless in comparison to with others. When you compare yourself with others, always others are better than yourself. Right? So I am not okay. You are okay, but I'm not okay. You compare yourself with other people, and other people when you compare yourself with, always are in a better position than yourself. Right? So this is another very unhealthy way of thinking. And the fourth life position is I'm not okay, you're not okay. All of us are not okay. This means, right? A helpless state, position of hopelessness, futility, and frustration. Now, operating from this place, people have lost interest in life and may see life as totally without promise. Now, these self-destructive stances characteristics of people who are unable to cope in the real world, and it may lead to extreme withdrawal and also a return to infantile behavior, or sometimes maybe violent behavior resulting in injury of death or death of himself or others. Now, in reality, each of us has a favorite positions. We operate from under stress. Whenever we are under stress, we operate, or in our normal life also, we operate from one of these positions. The challenge is to become aware of how we are attempting to make life real through our basic life position, and if necessary, create a healthy alternative. So basically, TA would try to change your unhealthy thinking with a healthy one, right? Your life positions from an unhealthy one to a healthy one. And also we have a life script, which basically is what you decide for yourself, how you decide your life to be, right? These are called life scripts. I will leave it to you for you to, to read. Now, Byrne talks about 3 ego states, right? Byrne ultimately 3 ego states as parent, adult, and child. Basically, let me just give you a gist of all these things. Okay? Because if I'm going to be too detailed, it's going to take too long. So basically, whenever there is a transaction, whenever there is a communication between you and other people, right? Or whenever, not only a conversation, but also when you interact with other people, you operate from one of these 3 ego states, right? Now, the parent ego states are behaviors, thoughts, and feelings which you copy from parents or parental figures. So you tend to be very authoritative, right? You tend to be very authoritative. And then the the adult ego state is a behavior, thought, and feelings which are direct response to the here and now. So this includes all the learned behaviors, all the learned moral standards, and all these things, right? Just as we talked about the super ego. So the adult ego states also look at the here and now and then give a response which is appropriate to that particular time. And the child ego state is a behavior or thoughts and feelings made from childhood, which is very, very childish. So basically, like for instance, let me give you try to explain this by giving you an example. See, when there is a transaction, when 2 people communicate, right? One person initiates a transaction with the transactional stimulus. The person at whom the stimulus is directed will respond with the transactional response. A simple transaction analysis involves identifying which ego state directed the stimulus and which ego state in the other person executed the response. Now, let me give you an example. If I ask you, what is your name? Right? So I'm asking you from a adult ego state. Very respectfully, I am dealing with you. I am asking you. Right? May I know your name? Could you please introduce yourself? Now, your response is, my name is such and such, and I'm coming from such and such place. My family is like this, and you give an honest answer, a very respectable one. That means you are operating from the adult ego state. Right? Now, your response is, it's none of your business. You don't have to know it. Right? Basically, then you're acting very childish, right? You're acting very childish, and then that means you are acting or you are operating from the child ego state. Now, if you are operating from the parent, then parent ego state, that means you're going to be interacting with me with a very authoritative, like a very authoritative figure, right? Telling me what to do, and you act as if you are my father or my mother, right? From a parental figure. So our transaction, right? Our interaction our communication. All these things are, all these things operate from either one of these three ego states. So when a transaction takes place, when I operate from the from the ego state, and reply or your response is from the child ego state, then that is when it is called cross transaction. Right? Cross transaction. That means you are not replying me from the same ego state that I'm dealing with you. Right? So that is where that creates a problem. So in a cross transaction, an ego state different than the ego state which we receive the stimuli is the one that responds. Right? So that is where sometimes if there's a transaction taking place, then if you are replying me from the if it's a parallel transaction, if you are replying me from the same ego state I'm dealing with, then it will further your the communication or the transactions can continue. But if it's a cross transaction, then it will lead to a stop, or the transaction will be finished. Right? Now, Byrne also talks about stroke. Now, stroke basically means pets or maybe dogs or cats, or they like to stroke. Right? And also infants, they like being stroked. Right? You stroke them gently when they sleep to lure them to sleep. Right? So those kind of strokes is very, very important. It's a fundamental unit of social action. A stroke is a unit of recognition. Right? It means you are recognizing that other people. So just as you stroke infant, adults also long for that stroke. Now, your stroke may not be physical stroke like the stroke that you have given to infants, but you may show this kind of stroke through your action, through your words. Like, for example, if you encourage people, that can be a stroke. If you have if your response is a positive one, that can also be a stroke. Right? So these strokes here, Eric Byrne says all of us need. Right? All of us need. And so these are some of the basic concepts. Basically, what TA is trying to do is trying to change all those unhealthy behavior, unhealthy thinking with the healthy one. Right? So basically, that is what TA is talking about. Your life position. If it's not healthy, if it's not productive, then change it to a TA transaction analysis would try to change it to a more appropriate one, to a more healthy one, right? Like, for example, the 4 life positions we talked about. I am okay, you're is a healthy life position. That means you are looking at things positively, everything. You're dealing with other people in a positive way, and how you deal with other people is very respectful as well. So I'm okay, you're okay is a healthy life position. So TA is trying to change your unhealthy life positions to basically that's what TA is trying to do. Okay, now moving on to the next one, logotherapy. We only have around 7 minutes, so let me just give you a simple explanation of logotherapy. Okay. Now, logotherapy is developed by Viktor Frankl. Now, Viktor Frankl has had a very, very rich experiences. Now, he spoke. I don't know whether you have come across this book, Man's Search for Meaning. There's been, this is one of the. It's a very thin book. It's a very small book. Yeah, very, very powerful one, and a very, very popular book. Okay. Now, in this book, he talks about this logotherapy. Now, this is basically this book, Man's Search for Meaning, is a book where he talks about his experiences in the Nazi concentration camp. Okay. He was a prisoner there during the World War II, under the Nazi concentration camp. and he has survived the Nazi concentration camp. Now, from his experiences in the Nazi concentration camp, he began to realize, he realized, or he has come up with this logotherapy. Okay? Now, which says that, now if you compare, if you look at the psychoanalysis, Freud's theory, Freud says that your past experiences influence your future life, right? That's what he has said, your present life. But Viktor Frankl, or the logotherapy, says that it is not only the past experiences that influences your life. It is also the future that that influences the way you behave, or the way it is the future. The future influences the here and now as well, your present experiences as well. That is what he's saying. So basically, what he is saying is that in the concentration camp, he found many people who are not surviving. Okay, the concentration camp. Now, when he found what he found is that those people who does not have anything to look forward to, right? Who doesn't have a will to meaning, right? Who doesn't have a meaning in life, who does not have anything to hope for in the future, those are the ones who gave up hope, and those are the ones who died. Many of the ones who died are those people. You see, of course, they are. He's not saying that all people who died are hopeless. Of course, there are people whom the Nazis killed, right? Who are sent to the gas chamber and all. No, he's not talking about that. But those the ones who has given up hope. He says that these are the ones who does not have any will to meaning, anything to look forward to. So what he is saying is that through this logotherapy versus what he is saying is that people who have something to look forward to, who have some meaning in life, right?
సో
Who
ప్రభు
have
నామములందరికీ శుభాలు తెలియజేస్తూ
are
ఉన్నాను.
the ones who can overcome many of these life obstacles.
ఈ సందర్భంలో
Whenever you have
ఉద్దేశం
crisis,
ఏంటంటే,
whenever you are experiencing
నిద్రించిన
crisis
వారు
situation,
మనకంటే
but then you have something to look forward to. You have a will to meaning.
అందుని
You have a
నిమిత్తమే
meaning in
నేను
life.
శుభం అనే పదాన్ని
Then
వాడుతున్నాను.
those are things that pushes you, that pulls you, right?
హలో
That
వస్తుందా?
gives you courage, that give you the strength to carry on
ఇప్పుడు వినపడుతుందా?
and to fight and overcome
It's not
whatever
okay?
obstacles life is giving. Right. So basically, that is what logotherapy is trying to do. It talks about
ఆడియో కనెక్ట్
the
ఉందా నాది?
importance of having hope. It talks about the importance of having will to meaning. Right. So Frankl's approach is based on three philosophical and psychological concepts. Freedom of will. You have the freedom. Right? You have the freedom to develop whatever
వినపడుతుందా? Now it is okay?
whatever hope you want to
Hello?
have, whatever meaning you want to have. Will to meaning is
వినపడుతుందా?
you have the freedom to have that meaning, will to meaning, and then
Hello?
this meaning in life,
అసలు రావడం
having
లేదా?
meaning in life will having something to look forward to will give you
Hello?
strength to overcome whatever problems you have in life. Right? Humans are not fully subject to
Hello?
conditions, but we are basically free to
Okay.
decide. Right? There is freedom of will.
ఓకే
We are not just a victim of our circumstances, but we have the freedom to decide,
ఓకే ఓకే
and we are capable of taking
మనకంటే
our own
ముందుగా
stand, decide on
నిద్రించిన
our
వారు,
own. And also,
మనకంటే
will to
ముందుగా
meaning is human beings are not only free, but
ఉన్నారు
most importantly,
అనే
they are
సత్యాన్ని
free to something,
మనం ఎప్పుడూ
namely
జ్ఞాపకం
to achieve
చేసుకుంటూ
goals and purpose. You are free to achieve
జయరాజ్ గారు
purpose.
గురించి
You are free to have goals.
ఆయన
You are
జ్ఞాపకాల
free to achieve
గురించి
those goals. The search for meaning is seen as
చెప్పాల్సిన
the primary
సందర్భం
motivation
నాకు ఇచ్చిన
of
పాస్టర్ గారికి
These are
వందనాలు
things
తెలియజేస్తూ ఉన్నాను.
that motivates you to move on.
మరి
Now,
ఈ
meaning life
సమయాన్ని
according
ఇచ్చిన
to
కుటుంబానికి కుమారులకు
logotherapy,
మరి
humans
ఆశీస్సులు
are called
తెలియజేస్తూ
upon
ఉన్నాను.
on the grounds of their freedom,
మరి జయరాజ్ గారి
responsibility to
పరిచర్యలో
bring forth the
ఎంతో
possibly
ప్రోత్సాహంతో
best in themselves
ఇష్టమైన
and in the
కాపురుగా
world
ఉన్నారు.
by
మరి
perceiving
విజయరావు
and
గారిని
realizing the meaning of
వందనాలు
the moment
తెలియజేస్తూ
in each and every
విజయరావు గారు
situation. Right?
మరి విజయవాడలో
Basically,
ఉండటం వారికి కూడా
what
ప్రత్యేకమైన వందనాలు
is we have freedom to find meaning in what we do.
జయరాజ్ గారు
So,
ఏ
logotherapy will try
యాటిట్యూడ్
to
చేసినా
help people to find those
పాస్టర్లు
meaning
ఉంటారు.
in their life.
ఇవాళ ముగ్గురు పాస్టర్లు ఉంటే
Find
నాకు
meaning in
సంతోషం
their
వేస్తుంది.
life. So people can
ఇదే
find meaning in their lives by
ఆయన
identifying
రెగ్యులర్
the
కలుసుకునే
meaning
సమయం
that
ఉంటే
they
ఇంకా ఎక్కువ
can.
మంది కాపర్లే ఉండేవాళ్ళు.
Right? So these are some of the
ఒక కాపరిగా నేను
psychotherapies that
ఇచ్చే
is
సాక్ష్యం
available.
ఎందుకంటే ఇప్పుడు ముగ్గురు కాపర్లు ఈ కుడికిలో కూర్చోవడం అంటే
Syllabus is
ఇటువంటి అన్నగనుకుల
since we
పరిస్థితుల్లో
ran out of time, I don't know whether we to continue or
ఆయన
stop
మీద
there.
ఉన్న ప్రేమ
But we have seen many
నేను
things to
కొన్ని విషయాలు చాలా
cover.
క్లుప్తంగా
Anyway,
జ్ఞాపకం చేస్తాను.
since
మిగిలిన
we
వాళ్ళు
have
చాలా
run out
మంది
of
ఉన్నారు
time, I will
కాబట్టి
give you the presentation. I will send
జయరాజ్
it
గారిని
even that
మొదటిసారిగా
you may get there.
ఆయన రిటైర్మెంట్ ఫంక్షన్
All right, thank you very much.
రిటైర్ అయిన తర్వాత
Okay, thank you, sir.
వేరే వేరే ఫంక్షన్స్ జరిగాయి.
Thank you so
బట్
much.
సంతోష్ నగర్ దేవాలయంలో రేకుల షెడ్
Thank
లో
you everybody for joining
ఆయన
the class.
ఫంక్షన్ ని
And
సంతోష్ నగర్
Best of luck
కాంగ్రిగేషన్
for your
ఏర్పాటు
exam
చేశారు.
also. The exam form
First
fill
time
up is
అప్పుడు
going
నేను
on. You just go to our website,
ప్రార్థనా కుడికలో స్టూడెంట్ పాస్టర్ గా
From
వచ్చి
there online you fill up the form
ఆ టైంలో నేను
and
స్టూడెంట్
there
పాస్టర్
the amount also will come
స్టూడెంట్
and
పాస్టర్
you
గా
have to
వచ్చి
make a
ఆ
DD
ప్రోగ్రామ్
demand
లో
draft and send it
నేను
directly to
పార్టిసిపేట్
the
చేసినప్పుడు
Synod of Sirampur
మొట్టమొదటిసారిగా జయరాజ్
office,
గారిని
not to the
చూడడం.
SCEPTRE office. Okay, not to the Calcutta office. You have to send it to
ఆ
the
తరువాత
Sirampur
నుంచి
address. You have to send
మళ్ళా
it.
నేను సంతోష్
At the same time, the last date of contact seminar
ఆయన
is
ప్రోత్సాహం ఉందని తెలుసుకోవడం
31st August. So it is better you
అప్పటి
pay us
నుంచి
before 31st
అంటే
August.
గడిచిన సంవత్సరం
So thank you so much
ఆయన
and best of luck
జీవితాన్ని
for your
ముగించేంత వరకు
exam.
అంటే రమారమి
All right.
Bye-bye, sir.
22-23 సంవత్సరాల
Thank you.
అనుబంధం
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
జయరాజ్ గారితో నాకు ఉండటం అది నేను చాలా సంతోషంగా ఫీల్ అవుతూ ఉన్నాను. ఎందుకు ఆ సంతోషాన్ని నేను ఫీల్ అవుతున్నానంటే